killed by his wife Muskan Rastogi and her boyfriend Sahil Shukla.
What if the person you loved the most was secretly plotting your murder? What if your own home, your safe space, became your tomb? In March 2025, a shocking crime unfolded in Meerut, Uttar Pradesh, that left the entire nation horrified. Saurabh Rajput, a former Merchant Navy officer, had no idea that the very people he trusted, his own wife and best friend, were planning his gruesome murder. Drugged, stabbed, dismembered, and sealed inside a cement-filled drum, his fate was beyond horrifying. But what happened next was even more chilling. In this video, we break down the twisted betrayal, the cold-blooded planning, and the shocking aftermath of the Meerut Merchant Navy officer murder. Stay with us as we uncover the dark truth behind this spine-chilling case. In March 2025, the city of Meerut, Uttar Pradesh, was shaken by the gruesome murder of 29-year-old former Merchant Navy officer, Saurabh Rajput. What seemed like a normal marital conflict turned into a horrifying crime that exposed betrayal, meticulous planning, and an unimaginable level of brutality. Saurabh Rajput had once been part of a prestigious profession, securing financial stability for his family. His marriage to Muskan Rastogi seemed normal to the outside world, but behind closed doors, cracks had started to appear. Arguments became frequent, suspicions grew, and trust eroded. On the night of March 4th, 2025, Saurabh was murdered in his own home. But this was not an act of sudden rage. It was a crime carefully planned and executed. His body was dismembered, hidden in a plastic drum filled with cement, and left in a rented apartment. For days, no one knew what had happened to him. His disappearance seemed like a mystery, until the foul smell led investigators to a crime scene that left them speechless. The details of the case gripped the nation. The chilling nature of the murder and the shocking revelations that followed made this one of India's most disturbing crime stories. But how did a marriage turn into murder? What led to this horrifying crime? Saurabh Rajput was a man of discipline and responsibility, shaped by years of hard work in the Merchant Navy. Born and raised in Meerut, Uttar Pradesh, he worked tirelessly to provide for his family, believing that financial stability and security would ensure a happy life. In 2016, he married Muskan Rastogi, a woman he loved deeply and envisioned spending his life with. Like most newlyweds, they had dreams of building a future together. At the time, Saurabh's job required him to spend months at sea, but he was earning well, and Muskan lived a comfortable life in his absence. However, what he failed to realize was that Muskan was not content. The long separations began to take a toll on their marriage. While Saurabh believed that his sacrifices were securing their future, Muskan felt abandoned. She craved companionship, emotional support, and excitement, things that a husband working overseas could not always provide. Slowly, cracks began to form in their marriage. Determined to save his relationship, Saurabh made the ultimate sacrifice. He resigned from the Merchant Navy. It was a painful decision, as it meant giving up not just his career, but also the financial stability he had worked so hard to achieve. However, he believed that love and family were worth more than money. He hoped that by staying home, he could rekindle their love and bring back the happiness they once shared. But instead of seeing this as an act of love, Muskan saw it as a weakness. Without his high-paying job, financial struggles soon followed. Saurabh tried multiple ways to earn a living, but nothing matched the income he once had. The luxuries Muskan was used to started disappearing, and resentment replaced affection. Arguments became frequent. The warmth they once shared was replaced by cold indifference. Muskan no longer saw Saurabh as a strong, dependable man she had married. Instead, she saw him as a burden. In 2019, the couple welcomed a daughter into their lives. For Saurabh, she was a symbol of hope, a reason to keep going despite the problems in his marriage. He believed that fatherhood would bring new meaning to his life and help rebuild his relationship with Muskan. But Muskin had already moved on. During Saurabh's absence, she had grown closer to his friend, Sahil Shukla. What began as casual conversations soon turned into a full-fledged affair. Saurabh had no idea that while he was struggling to provide for his family, his wife was betraying him with the man he once considered a friend. When Saurabh found out about Muskin's affair, he was devastated. Betrayal from a spouse is painful enough, but betrayal from both a wife and a friend was unimaginable. Despite the overwhelming pain, he chose to stay in the marriage for the sake of his daughter. He believed that love and patience could fix what was broken. He was wrong. Instead of walking away, Saurabh decided to take another drastic step. He moved to London. In early 2020, he left the UK and started working in a bakery, sending most of his earnings back home. The job was far beneath his qualifications, but he endured it for his family. Every month, he sent money, ensuring Muskin and their daughter had everything they needed. Even from thousands of miles away, he believed he could still fix his marriage. But Muskin had other plans. With Saurabh gone, Muskin and Sahil no longer had to hide their relationship. They began openly spending time together. Sahil became a father figure to Saurabh's daughter, stepping into a role that rightfully belonged to him. Muskin stopped pretending. She no longer saw Saurabh as part of her life. Every time he called, she was distant. Every time he asked about their future, she avoided the conversation. Saurabh still clung to hope, believing that his sacrifices would eventually bring his family back together. But Muskin had already made up her mind. In February 2025, Saurabh decided to return to India for his daughter's birthday. He was excited, believing this would be a chance to reconnect with his family. He informed Muskin of his arrival, unaware that she and Sahil had already planned his murder. When he arrived in Meerut, Muskin greeted him warmly, acting as if nothing was wrong. She cooked his favorite meal, smiled at him, and pretended to be the loving wife he had always hoped for. Saurabh, exhausted from his journey, let his guard down. Little did he know, Sahil was waiting. Every word Muskin spoke, every gesture of kindness, was part of a calculated plan. Saurabh had no idea that he was walking into his own death. The night of March 4th, 2025, began like any other for Saurabh Rajput. He had spent the day with his family, enjoying a home-cooked meal prepared by his mother before returning to his own house. It was a rare moment of peace for a man who had spent years fighting to save his marriage. But Muskin and Sahil had other plans. They had waited for this moment, meticulously planning every step of what would become one of the most brutal murders in Meerut's history. They were ready to kill. When Saurabh arrived home that evening, Muskin welcomed him with a smile. She had prepared his favorite meal, a gesture that would have seemed thoughtful, if not for the deadly secret hidden within it. Unbeknownst to him, his food was laced with sedatives. The drugs were carefully chosen. They wouldn't kill him immediately, just weaken him enough to make their job easier. Saurabh, exhausted from the day, ate without suspicion. As the minutes passed, he began to feel strange. His limbs grew heavy, his vision blurred. His body, once strong and full of life, began to fail him. But before he could react, darkness took over. He had walked into his wife's trap. The moment Saurabh lost consciousness, Sahil emerged. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts. With a sharp knife in hand, Sahil stabbed him repeatedly. The blade pierced his flesh. Again and again, blood spilled onto the floor, a silent witness to the horror unfolding. Not once did he fight back. He couldn't. The drugs had done their job, leaving him defenseless against a brutal attack. Within minutes, he was dead. But for Muskin and Sahil, the nightmare had just begun. Disposing of the body, a chilling plan. Killing Saurabh was only the first step. Now, they had to make him disappear. With cold precision, they dismembered his body, cutting it into approximately 15 pieces. Each cut was methodical, each action calculated. The house, once a home, was now a butcher's workshop. Blood stained the walls. The air was thick with the metallic scent of death. But Muskin and Sahil did not stop. Piece by piece, they stuffed the body parts into a large plastic drum. But simply hiding the remains was not enough. They needed to eliminate all traces of the crime. So, they filled the drum with cement, ensuring that Saurabh's body would remain trapped inside, forever hidden. Finally, they sealed it shut. A drum that once carried water or construction materials now held the remains of a man who trusted his wife until the very end. The final move, hiding the evidence. With the drum completely sealed, Muskin and Sahil faced their next challenge: where to hide it. They knew keeping it in their home was too risky. If someone noticed a strange smell or questioned its presence, everything would fall apart. So they decided to move it. Under the cover of darkness, they transported the heavy drum to a rented apartment in Merit's Indira Nagar area. It was a perfect hiding place, an empty space, far from prying eyes. To anyone looking in from the outside, it was just another storage item. But inside, it held the gruesome secret of a life brutally taken. When authorities eventually discovered what had happened, they were horrified. Even seasoned investigators, used to dealing with violent crimes, were shaken by the sheer brutality of the act. This wasn't just a murder. It was a cold-blooded execution, followed by a carefully planned cover-up. Saurabh Rajput had trusted the wrong people, and in return, they had turned his home into his grave. In an attempt to cover up their crime, Muskin and Sahil behaved as if nothing had happened. There was no panic, no sign of remorse, just a carefully executed deception to make it seem like Saurabh had simply vanished. In the days immediately following the murder, they continued with their daily routines. Muskin kept using Saurabh's phone to send messages to his family, pretending everything was normal. His relatives received texts stating that he had some urgent business to attend to and would be unavailable for a while. But these messages lacked his usual tone, and his family soon grew suspicious. Meanwhile, Muskin and Sahil had other plans. They packed their bags and set off on a 15-day trip to Himachal Pradesh, traveling through Shimla, Manali, and Kaisal. Their journey was marked by tourist activities, hotel stays, and moments of leisure, as if they were simply a couple enjoying a vacation. Throughout their travels, they made sure to post photos on social media, portraying a happy and carefree image. They were seen celebrating Holi, throwing colors in the streets, smiling for pictures, and drinking alcohol at parties. Those who saw them had no idea about the horrifying crime they had committed just days before. Despite their attempt to enjoy the trip, there were moments of noticeable tension. A cab driver who drove them around Himachal Pradesh later recalled that they barely spoke to each other during their rides. Their conversations were short and mechanical. Something felt off. Back in Merit, Saurabh's family began to worry. Days had passed with no direct contact. His mother, who had spoken to him regularly before, found it strange that he wasn't returning calls. His younger brother tried calling him multiple times, but every time there was either no response or a vague text message from his phone. At first, they tried to believe the excuses in the text, thinking maybe Saurabh was caught up in something urgent. But as time went on, the unease grew stronger. Something didn't feel right. The final straw came when his family reached out to Muskin, asking for an explanation. Her responses were inconsistent. She claimed that Saurabh had gone away for some personal work, but couldn't provide any details. She seemed evasive, avoiding specific questions and failing to explain why he hadn't contacted them himself. Sensing that something was terribly wrong, Saurabh's family made a decision. They filed a missing person report. Once the report was filed, the police began an investigation into Saurabh's sudden disappearance. They started with the basics, checking his last known whereabouts, phone records, and bank transactions. The first red flag came when investigators discovered that Saurabh's phone had been active, but only for text messages. There had been no calls or personal interactions. This was unusual for someone who had previously been in constant contact with his family. The second clue was even more troubling. When police checked security footage near the couple's home, they found something suspicious. Muskin and Sahil were seen leaving the house at odd hours, carrying heavy bags. What exactly had they been transporting? At this point, the police were piecing together a disturbing picture. With each passing day, the likelihood that Saurabh had simply gone missing seemed less and less probable. They knew they had to act fast. The police investigation into Saurabh Rajput's disappearance had already raised several red flags. His phone activity was limited to text messages. His wife Muskin's responses were inconsistent, and security footage showed unusual movements from Muskin and Sahil. However, the breakthrough in the case came when police traced a rented apartment in Indira Nagar, Meerut. This apartment, rented just a few days before Saurabh's disappearance, had no residents, no furniture, and no signs of daily use. Yet, something was terribly wrong. When officers arrived at the apartment in Indira Nagar, they were hit with an unbearable stench. The odor of decomposing flesh was unmistakable. Neighbors had already reported the unusual smell, but had assumed it was coming from a dead animal or garbage left unattended. However, as the police stepped inside, they knew they had found something far worse. Their eyes fell on a large blue plastic drum in the corner of the room. It was sealed shut, covered in cement, and appeared oddly placed for an empty apartment. Something was inside. Realizing that the sealed drum could hold the key to the investigation, police officers immediately called for forensic experts and began the process of breaking it open. Using hammers and tools, they started chipping away at the cement. As soon as the lid was forced open, the truth was revealed in its most gruesome form. Saurabh Rajput's dismembered body lay inside, cut into nearly 15 pieces, stuffed within the drum, now partially dissolved by the cement and decomposition. The sheer brutality of the act shocked even the most experienced investigators. The level of planning, the method of disposal, and the complete disregard for human life made this one of the most horrifying crimes Meerut had ever witnessed. With the discovery of Saurabh's remains, Muskin's deception began to crumble. Police immediately brought her in for questioning. At first, she pretended to be shocked, acting as if she had no idea what had happened. She denied any involvement, claiming that Saurabh must have had enemies who wanted to harm him. However, the inconsistencies in her story were impossible to ignore. When asked about the rented apartment, she claimed she knew nothing about it. But police already had documents proving the apartment was rented in her name. When shown the security footage of her and Sahil carrying large bags out of the house, she failed to provide a reasonable explanation. The web of lies was falling apart fast. Realizing that they had overwhelming evidence, police intensified their interrogation of both Muskin and Sahil. Hours of questioning led to cracks in their defenses. Finally, Muskin broke down. She admitted to the crime, detailing how they had drugged, killed, and dismembered Saurabh, sealing his body in cement to erase all traces of the murder. Sahil, too, confessed without remorse, explaining how he had personally stabbed Saurabh multiple times before they chopped his body into pieces. With their confessions recorded in undeniable forensic evidence, Muskin and Sahil were arrested and charged with murder. Their meticulously planned crime had failed, and the truth had finally been uncovered. The case now moved to the courts, where the nation would watch as justice for Saurabh Rajput unfolded. This case is a chilling reminder of how betrayal, greed, and deception can lead to unimaginable horrors. A man who sacrificed everything for his family met a fate he never deserved, murdered in his own home by the people he trusted the most. As the legal battle continues, one question remains. Will justice truly be served? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Should the punishment be harsher? Do you think there were signs that went unnoticed? If you found this video informative, hit the like button, subscribe for more gripping true crime stories, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and take care.